Has an interesting article about the remaking of Fernando Mendoza and Kurt Signetti, finding him, thinking he had a lot of promise. We didn't know. I mean, I'd watched him play a couple times at Cal. I didn't think he was going to go 16-0 and win a national championship and beat Ohio State and Miami. So, and I've said before, I'm a huge believer in Fernando Mendoza. But if you were telling me, Colin, you have to bet your 401k on he's going to be fine and make the Raiders respectable, or he's going a bunch of playoff games, I would take the latter. Okay. So when's the last college quarterback that went to a bottom 5 NFL franchise and consistently won? Joe Burrow and CJ Stroud. And Joe Burrow has not made the playoffs for 3 straight years, right? They can't protect him. Once he got paid, they can't protect him and elevate the roster. And Burrow is a much higher graded prospect than Fernando Mendoza was. So Burrow got to a Super Bowl, AFC championship, took a really bad franchise there, but yet since then, he can't even make the playoffs. Can't make the playoffs. Andrew Luck, again, higher prospect than Fernando Mendoza. 11-5, 11-5, 11-5. But his career, he couldn't beat the good teams, and eventually he leaves early. So the Bengals have struggled to protect Joe Burrow and elevate the roster once they pay him. And Andrew Luck, they couldn't protect him. And then there's C.J. Stroud, who appears to have regressed. So ask yourself, who are the young quarterbacks that come into this league and win really quickly? See if you notice anything. Brock Purdy, Goff, Drake May, Caleb, Mahomes, Bo Nix, Lamar Jackson. Look at their coaches. And by the way, John Harbaugh with Lamar, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Kyle Shanahan, Goff in year 2 pops with McVay, May pops in year 2 with Vrabel, Caleb pops in year 2 with Caleb, with Ben Johnson. So, I mean, again, is Clint Kubiak a great coach? Could be. And I love Fernando Mendoza. But the truth is, when you read this article, you find the college quarterback, there's like a linear. It's like the ones that work by year 2, it's the coach. Like the coach is a huge part of it. So it really boils down to, is Clint Kubiak the guy?
Well, yes. Coaching matters massively. This take is a little bit all over the place right now. Because first off, the Texans also can't protect C.J. Stroud, by the way. But I don't know why he offered the O-line excuse. Joe Burrow has also been injured a lot. That's also why they haven't made the playoffs. And they're also not making any real concrete changes. The Raiders have been willing to make changes and hire and fire. They are trying to make moves. They've taken some pretty big swings at coaches. They haven't worked out, whether we're talking about Gruden or Josh McDaniels. But, they weren't terrible hires. They were smart moves at the time, just like hiring Clint Kubiak right now is the smart move. And, you want to talk about, again, winning consistently. Caleb Williams went to a bottom team. We can kind of go on and on and on. Jared Goff, the Los Angeles Rams were a terrible team. He was terrible. They were like, oh my gosh, is he a bust? And then they fired Jeff Fisher, right? Jeff Fisher and hired Sean McVay. So I don't know, man. I think we're looking at things through a somewhat dated lens when we talk about this. You need a great coach. You need a great coach, and you need your team to be run relatively well, right? Do you have to be this elitely run franchise where you're just ruthless and always making the best deals possible? Obviously, that's ideal, obviously. But do you have to have that? Not necessarily. But you do have to consistently make smart decisions. Make no mistake about it. I emphasized this in one of my previous clips because Colin was talking about how greatly run the Seahawks are, and it's like the GM for the Seahawks wanted to keep Geno Smith and DK Metcalf. That was the absolute plan, and then it didn't. Then they made the smart decisions, and when they, after the fact, they then made the right decisions, etc., right? So, that makes sense. So, It's not always about always having the perfect first idea, but it's still being able to navigate the ups and downs and the lefts and rights in terms of the decisions that you make. And that's why I said about the Raiders before, drafting Mendoza and hiring Clint Kubak, it just makes sense. And if it ends up failing, it was still the right move. It was still the right move. It's the concrete move, and it's the best move. When you listen to some of these things of people trying to figure out how to get over regret or remorse or mistakes they've made, it's like you have to make the best decision you can with the amount of information that you have. You know, anytime you make a mistake, it's often like you're making the best decision you can in that moment with the available information. And that is what the Raiders are doing. And that's why I support it. And we, you know, now we're going to question how good or not good Clinton Kubak is a coach. You know, listen, is he guaranteed to be the next Sean McVay or Ben Johnson or something? No, right? No. But can he have a ton of success? Do I think his floor outside as long as he doesn't fail spectacularly at just being a head coach now? Not an offensive mind, but just a head coach. There's still plenty of room to succeed. Plenty of room to succeed. We saw it even with Mike McDaniel and the Miami Dolphins that when the roster was good enough and Tua was actually healthy, even though Mike McDaniel was not a great head coach, boy, did he get that offense humming, and boy, was he in a position to get to the playoffs and even win some playoff games, right? But when you also add to the equation, things get a little weird, and you're also dealing with some difficult people like a Tyreek Hill, etc., and that's something that Mendoza now brings to the table in a positive way. So I think as long as your floor is like, hey, you know what? I'm not a disaster from a head coach standpoint, right? I can run practices, I can run meetings and teams, and I know how to keep everyone organized. I know how to hire a staff and whatnot. As long as you're just kind of decent as at that, I think that, you know, Clint Kubak has a ton of success with Mendoza and this Raiders team. There's also enough people in the building right now with the Raiders that I just think they're moving in the right direction and they'll be able to navigate some of these pitfalls. The Cincinnati Bengals simply do not have that. They do, you know, they just do not have that. And that's been proven year after year after year after year. So yeah, I don't think the Raiders are as poorly run as people are trying to say they are. Again, I know they haven't been great for a long time. I know that. But like I think they were on the short end of some bad luck. Honestly, I really, really do. I mean, imagine if what's his face was just not insane. Antonio Brown and he stayed around him and Gruden and Carr. That could have been awesome. That could have been genuinely awesome. You know, Gruden was a swing for the fence, right? He hadn't coached in forever. He gave him this massive contract, but he was willing to pay the money and take a huge swing. And then again, even Josh McDaniels, like, you know, you're betting on Josh McDaniels. It's not the worst bet. It's not the worst swing to take. AP was the worst take. That was the worst swing. And they moved on from it right away and they said, well, we're going to bring in now a veteran, someone who has true established success within this last, you know, decade, Pete Carroll, and you're going to bring in Geno Smith. You're going to bring in someone who, you know, has had success and it didn't work and they moved on right away. They're not planting their feet down, right? They're not sticking to it just for the sake of sticking to it. You have to respect that, and that is the sign of someone making smart decisions. It just is. It just is. And I think that the moment that they get the coach and quarterback duo together, I think they will continue to make better decisions and build a significantly better team as the years unfold. I think when you tie that together, I think you'll see a ton of success. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Las Vegas Raiders? The potential that Kubak is just not that good of a coach, that Mendoza is good, but Kubiak's not, or that Mendoza is bad, but Kubak is, or that they're both good, but they can't protect him and build a good enough team. All the options. Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get to some discussions, let's get to some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much.